Hello, this is Doug Walker, and next to me is...
Hello out there!
He looks further away, it's the wide angle.
I look like I'm 8 feet from you.
I'm gonna squash your head, hold on. There we go. Okay, anywho. This is my brother, obviously. And a lot of people have asked, how do you make a Nostalgia Critic episode?
Poorly!
Which I never thought it was like that. I don't know, it's pretty straightforward in my opinion, but a lot of people keep asking.
Watch movie, make jokes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, but yeah, a lot of people have asked in the time and stuff like that, so that's basically what we're going to do here. Usually what happens is that we pick a movie, the one we're doing today is a Doomsday Machine for this DVD, and we are going to, the first thing we do is we just watch it, and pretty much like what he said, we just make jokes. We just do like mystery science theater, so he's a little better at it than I am. And I just write down the best ones pretty much. So yeah, that's what we're going to do, and we'll let you watch a little bit.
That's the closest thing to an Oscar we're gonna see. S&S Sound Services. Suck and suck.
Thank God they only have one guard in this entire place.
Budget cuts, Doug. May want to do a Dr. Insano bit.
Yeah, that's true. They're breaking out Robbie the robot. Did she wear a wig over her black hair? It was a black wig!
Now, if we throw a long pass to our wide receiver here, we can make the touchdown.
Well, what do you consider unusual circumstances?
Anything we're not prepared for.
Oh, dude.
What do you consider unusual circumstances? Things that are unusual. Apparently, it's 5 o'clock in the moon, according to our numerous clocks.
Well, I mean, you guys aren't taking him seriously, are you? Those chopstick jockeys could...
Chopstick jockey.
That's a new one. Those Mugu pansies.
Would you care to join me on a tour of the ship? See what makes it tick?
Would you care to start my thrusters? Fully go where no woman has gone before?
We have liftoff.
They're all dressed like Powerpuff Girls.
I'm the brainy one.
Nothing up here will wash socks. So, yeah, that gives you an idea how the watching experience goes. Kind of got pretty fucking boring near the end there, didn't it? What was it, about 20 minutes of just looking at the same goddamn thing? That was
Manos the Hands of Fate worthy.
Yeah, that was curiously bad. Yeah, done watching that. See you at the writing process. Alright, so you've seen us watch the movie and we just sort of shout jokes at it, and usually the way the script sort of looks, these are just sort of very basic notes, like love the soundtrack. That just reminds me of talking about the fact there's no music. Closest thing to Oscar we'll ever see. I remember that was something in the credits. It looks like Bubble in Space. The credits gave up for a second, and then I guess they came back. All black and a white wall. Not smart. So all these little things that it's not, you know, even something where I'm not entirely sure, like, you know, should I do an Insano bit? I think Insano's spelled wrong, but you get sort of this general idea, just these jokes, you know, or a Dr. Smith joke. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with all these, and I just sort of figure it out as I'm writing. Now, the writing process usually takes, like, 3 to 4 hours, I want to say. Sometimes it can take longer, but usually it's around that amount of time. But the reason, like, you know, you might be seeing some of this saying, you know, oh, well, he watches the movie, that takes, like, 2 hours. He writes it, that takes, like, 3 to 4 hours, you know, and then he films it, that takes about 2 hours. Why doesn't he just do this all, like, in one day? Just make it one long day of work. There's 2 reasons. One is that I make other videos, sometimes cons pop up, or I'm working on other projects for the site. So things do pop up, and it's best to pace it out. But the other reason is that a lot of times I think it's smart with a project like this, you know, to sort of, once you write down the jokes, to sort of just let them sit for a bit. Like, I'm coming back to this the next day, and if I look at a joke, like, maybe in the moment I thought was really funny, but when I see it again, you know, maybe it doesn't click. Maybe something just doesn't flow as much as I thought. And it also gives time to think of other ideas, because once you see the movie and then you come back to it, you can often remember what stood out the most. Like, what do you remember after a day of seeing that movie? Because sometimes you can see something right after seeing it and like, oh yeah, we'll make a big joke out of that, but then when you really think about it, it wasn't anything that huge. So this is all stuff to keep in mind if, you know, when and if you do something like this. Now, often what I'll do is I'll write the movie, or I'll write the review for the movie while actually watching it. And I highly recommend that if you ever do this, because if you ever write something and you don't have the footage in front of you, a lot of times it's much harder to mimic, it's much harder to remember the exact impact it had, because sometimes you remember things differently. So in this case, I'm watching it on YouTube because it's a public domain movie and I couldn't find a DVD of it. So usually I watch it on DVD, but in this case I'm watching it on YouTube. Okay, so it's the next day. This is filming day, and I'm going to give you an idea of just what my scripts look like. And as you can see, hold on, they're not incredibly professional looking. Usually what I do is I just write them all out like that. There's no paragraph indents or anything at all. I don't even write the line hello on the Nostalgia Critic, because I know I'm going to say it. Now, you might be wondering what the red is about. Well, the red is to remind me of anything that needs to be shot that isn't just at the traditional background. Like here, I have a little thing that says conducting coffee, and that's just a note to remind me that I have to do a scene where I'm conducting the coffee maker. What else here? We got a scene where I'm acting as, let's see, the president of Astra. You know, I'll probably do that against a green screen. And here's another one where I'm going to do, like, the stand-up comedian. Also, whenever there's a picture that Jim J. Ross needs to Photoshop, I'll usually put that in red as well. Well, that gives you the general idea. Let's go to the set. Hello! As you can see, it's not very far away from my computer. It's very, very close. Now, luckily, I have two cameras. Because Channel Awesome was nice enough to get me two. And a lot of people ask what kind of camera do I use. And as you can see here is the Sony HD AV-CHD. You can get more information there. The 2.3 megapixels. I don't know. If you're looking for that, that's the kind of camera I use. The tripod is pretty close, you know, to me. As you can also see, it's not a huge area. You know, over here it gets sort of clunky with a lot of my computer stuff. In terms of lights that I use, I only have tungstens for now, though I'm sort of being given an education from Ed and Lindsay about better lights to use. Probably fluorescent lights would be better. This one's been through hell, as you can see. Look at that thing there. That's been dented. It's fallen over a few times, so I gotta get a new one anyway. This one's also a tungsten. It's much smaller, but it gets the job done. This, I don't think this is a film light, but this is what was given to me when we asked Bargo to get our film light. He got us this. This one doesn't even work anymore, but this one does. It gets the job done. It's probably the brightest out of all of them, so I sort of, you know, if you point it more towards the center, it gets brighter. So I sort of point it more just to light up that area, sort of get a little even. You know, anyone knows about light, you know, three-point lighting. That's kind of what I have going on here. So, yeah, let's get to the actual filming. So, as you can see, I'm just about ready to film, but what? Looks like I'm in nuclear winter. It's totally bright here. That's because the exposure is set too high. So now what I'm going to do on the camera is I'm going to bring it down a bit because you can actually play with the exposure on this camera. I think you can play with them actually on most cameras. Now before I do that, you'll see that you can actually bring it down. But, oh, it's way too dark. So you can bring it up. And you try to just sort of find that nice medium, usually about here. In fact, even then, I sort of go back and forth. I think I'm going to do this one. Usually, because it's HD, I try to go a bit darker, so actually it's a little hard to say with this. I'll do this one. I could be wrong, but don't gotta do that. Now, here's the thing. There's also a setting for automatic exposure. Now, you do that, that automatically gets you to sort of the even levels. But the thing about that is, now, let's say I'm saying something, I want to get really close. You see, the lighting sort of changes. When I come back, the lighting changes again. If I put my hand up here, the lighting changes. If I put it back here, the lighting changes. That can be very distracting, and a lot of times it can't be in your control. The camera just sort of takes it and decides what it wants. So most of the time, you want to have it on manual, and you want to just get the setting right. But there are times, like let's say you're filming, you know, just home video or a documentary or something like that, and you know you're going to be in a lot of places where the lighting's going to be flying around a lot and you need it to adjust quickly. Sometimes it's good to have it on auto, but most of the time you want it on manual. With that said, let's get this back. think that looks about right. Yeah, actually, this looks about right. And then what I do a lot of the times is that I'll import it into the computer, and another great thing about HD is that actually it used to be, when we would shoot, that if we had to go darker or lighter, or we had to choose between the two, we'd go brighter so you can see it. Well, now with HD, because it's getting so much detail, you can take it and you can turn up the brightness and the contrast, and it won't look that bad. If anything, it'll look better. So if you have an HD camera and you're wondering which one to do, go darker, usually. Just a hint darker, don't go super dark. But if you have to choose between something a little brighter or a little darker, usually go a little darker. That's usually the best route, because you can fix it in post. Everything's fixable in post. Okay, now I have my script here, and you might be wondering, how do I know what I'm going to say to the camera and what I'm just going to read? Honestly, since it's written the day before, I can usually just sort of remember. Like, I remember that when I get up to the line, Doomsday Machine, I'm going to go to the visuals, I'm going to play the music, I'm going to do all that stuff. So I look over this line, get it down in my head, and I usually do a couple takes. Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic guy. Remember it so you don't have to. And welcome to another special edition DVD review. And may I remind you, there's no refunds. Oh yeah, you should be moaning, because today we got Doomsday Machine! Alright, so that's one take. Now, I usually don't just do one take, I do several, because especially with something where you're supposed to be playing with your emotions and reactions are everything in this show, you have to do a lot of various reactions. So that one got a little big, oh yeah, you better be afraid. This one gonna play down a little bit. Hello, I'm a Nostalgia Critic guy. Remember it so you don't have to. And welcome to another special edition DVD review. And may I remind you, there's no refunds. Oh, you better moan, because today we got Doomsday Machine. And you notice that one was a lot more chipper. The reason I do that is because sometimes just the sarcasm or the cynicism, of being positive about something, like enjoying making you suffer, can work just as well as me getting mad and me getting angry. Because if it's one tone throughout the whole thing, that it tends to be exactly that, just one tone, one note, and it can get a little boring. You want to mix it up a bit. So usually with every line, I do about minimum 3 takes. Sometimes I can do as many as like 10. Because you sort of feel around, you just sort of get what you think is the best feel for it, or when you think you have a good variety. Sometimes, most of the time I find with me, it's either the very first take or the very last take. It's very rare that it's one of the middle ones, but sometimes it is. Sometimes I get that perfect one in the middle without even thinking about it. And now, since I know you're not going to see me during this clip, I'm going to just read this part while not looking at the camera. And I do it from this angle. I don't go to a microphone because I find that the more fluent you can make something when talking, usually the less distracting it is. So if my voice is sort of kept this volume and has this frequency throughout the whole thing, you're less likely to get distracted from the comedy. You're less likely to be sort of thrown off. So with that said, I just read this part.